Yeah, and I'll put the oddments in here, and there's the two that went at the top. I've got two, oh, those two, yeah.
In charity parlance, a legacy is a gift you leave in your will to support the work of an organisation which is important to you. Legacies are hugely important for charities like the WEA. Most of our funding, including the funding we get from the Government Skills Funding Agency, comes with strict rules and outcomes which must be achieved, often within a certain period of time. That's not always a bad thing, but it means we can't often try new things or new ways of working in case we don't achieve exactly what we said we would.
And then there's it. It looks lovely, you're doing really well.
Legacies usually come with some stipulations, to be used in a certain location or to support a certain group of people, for example. But generally, the person leaving the legacy trusts their chosen charity to put it to good use, however they see fit. It's thanks to this generosity and trust that charities are able to grow and develop as organisations and undertake work which may not otherwise be possible. WEA Southern Region has been lucky enough to receive several significant gifts from wills over the past few years, and we're taking a closer look at one of those today. Fred and Catherine Adler were both lifelong socialists and trade unionists, with a passion for equality and a belief in the transformative power of education. Catherine's family were of German origin, but she was born in Holland and came to England as a young girl at the outbreak of the First World War. Catherine was from an upper middle class family who moved to the USA when she was in her teens. She decided to stay in the UK with her uncle, who funded her through Oxford University in the 1930s. She went on to teach for the WEA in Leeds and Hull during the war, and was appalled by the poverty she encountered. After the war, she threw herself with added zeal into teaching adults, particularly trade union courses, and that's where she met Fred. Fred, a Jew, came to the UK from Germany before the Second World War to escape persecution by the Nazis. He and Catherine met when Fred attended a summer school she'd organised in Cambridge in 1954. In 1958 they married, and together moved to Oxford, where Catherine took up a post as staff tutor in the university's extramural department. Fred worked for many years as an orderly at the Nuffield Orthopaedic Hospital, but her work became their life. She's remembered by those who knew her as a powerful force in the Oxford social education scene. Catherine retired from full-time teaching in 1979, but still taught up to 4 WEA classes a week for a further 9 years. Even in her mid-80s, she continued to give lectures and seminars on request. Fred survived Catherine by some years and quietly lived out his days in Headington. In March this year, WEA trustees approved acceptance of a large bequest. We have received £100,000 to date, an incredibly generous gift. The first work supported by the Legacy is a joint project with Ruskin College to design and make a mosaic for their new building in Headington, Oxford.
So this group today, this is our second session. The first session I explained the whole project. If I could just show you the design. So this is the design we're working on. It's a series of 8 panels. It's for the new Ruskin building in Old Headington. And it has been designed by myself. And we're working through all of these panels through a series of 5 courses. So this is course 2, and we're working on this bottom panel here. They're working very well, so we might end up doing part of this one as well. They've got 8 weeks. The panels represent a tree of life, a tree of learning. There are various symbols included from the Ruskin College and from WEA. We've got the international WEA logo at the bottom here. We've got various logos from Ruskin Banner.
How did you come to meet him then?
Well, I worked in Summerfield, and I was on the checkouts, and that's where So when he used to come in, and they tend to come to the same people if you help them with their shopping and things like that. So yeah, no, he was lovely. But I didn't know his name or anything like that. Yeah.
And it was only when you learnt about this course that you put two and two together because you saw the photo,
it was
was
a
it?
picture, and I said, oh, because it's funny, since I've come back from Spain, I've sort of looked out to see if you sort of see different people, and I've thought about him, not knowing that he's not here anymore, because I don't know how old he was, but he didn't exactly. I mean, he only looked in his early 70s, I thought, but I don't know how old he was. So, but no, he was lovely.
And I lived and worked in Headington as well, and I remember seeing their faces. Didn't know them exactly, but when you see photographs, you say, "Oh yes, I remember seeing them about."
So it's nice, I guess, now coming on this project and them having sort of funded this work, and you
Yes, and
maybe
I've
not.
actually been round the grounds of Ruskin College, so I sort of know the building in Ruskin. So it was quite nice to sort of see where this is going to go.
Yeah, be a nice link, won't it?
Yes,
From seeing them just socially out and about to coming on the course and then doing this, and then actually finally seeing it where it will end up.
Being as we're both Headington from Headington, it's nice.
When I was asked by a friend to join a community mosaic making work group, I readily agreed, although all the information I had at that time was the venue, date and time. On the first evening we were told the background to the WEA project, and that it was funded by the Adler Legacy. Immediately I was intrigued, and when the names Fred and Catherine Adler were mentioned, I was very pleasantly surprised. What a coincidence! In 1964, I came to Oxford as a shy 18-year-old to start training as a nurse, a profession I would remain in for the next 46 years. I started at the Nuffield Orthopaedic Centre here in Oxford, and after 8 weeks in school, I was allocated to one of the men's wards, which was bad enough for a fairly innocent 18-year-old, but even worse because of the reputation of the ward sister. In those days, all ward sisters appeared as tyrants, but this one was very stern and had a reputation for shouting at new student nurses from the office door to the furthest corners of the ward. She always knew what you had done, even though it appeared that she never left her office. My saving grace was to be Fred Adler. Fred was working on the ward as an orderly, having previously worked in the hospital's operating theatre as a theatre orderly. It was Fred who befriended me, a friendship which continued for many years. He warned me of sisters' likes and dislikes, taught me how to care for the male patients, and was my lookout when sister was on the prowl. I learnt so much about looking after patients from him, simple things which made the patients more comfortable and my confidence increase. For some reason he hated my first name, Jennifer, and once he found out my middle name he always used it. He was the only person ever to call me Alma, and always did. After I left the ward, he remained a friend, checking on my progress, and I often went to his home to meet with him and Catherine. When my first son was born in the John Radcliffe, one of his first visitors was Fred, who was in the hospital visiting Catherine when he heard that I was in the maternity wing and came over to see me. Fred was a fascinating man, always ready to give of his knowledge and time, but equally he could be very critical and prickly when he felt undervalued by some of my nursing student colleagues, who only saw a ward orderly and not the person that he was. I knew nothing of his background. He would never talk about his early life and where he came from originally, but I knew Catherine was a lecturer, but not where she worked. They appeared to me to be a devoted couple, Fred increasingly taking on a caring role for Catherine as she became less physically able. I saw very little of them in later years. Visiting their home was difficult, with 2 lively boys, but I always had cards at Christmas, occasional phone calls, and heard how they were doing from one of their neighbours. Fred is always part of my memories of those 2 years at the start of my nursing career, and to me was a great teacher and mentor, although officially he was not either. Ward orderlies were not considered to be educators. He was a perfect example of someone who was willing to give of his knowledge if he was given the opportunity and the respect that he deserved. To be working on the Mosaic funded by the legacy Fred and Catherine left is a privilege, and in some way repays some of their friendship and Fred's contribution to my early nursing career.
Hello, my name is Mariam. I first got involved with the WEA when I did a couple of courses with Emma and Jude. The first one was childcare and the second one was the teaching assistants course. And Emma asked me whether I wanted to volunteer for this arts project that they were going to be involved in, because she knew that I actually like doing arts and crafts. So I went along for the interview, and she gave me some information about it, which are quite, interested me. So I was involved in the first one, which was last term, which I really enjoyed. There was a couple of women on the course whose English wasn't very good, who I helped out with. And then with this one, it's completely different because it's with the elderly, who I've never really worked with, so it's quite a new experience for me. But so far, it's been quite good. And I look forward to doing the next one at the Roundabout Centre, which is going to be in the Children's Centre, so that's again completely different. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Great.
Reminiscing, Catherine and Fred Adler by Anne Seven. My acquaintance with Catherine Adler began at the first WEA course I ever attended in 1969. It was held in Long Crendon, a village in Buckinghamshire to which we had just moved. Catherine, our tutor, came to us from the extramural department in Oxford. It has had a number of titles since then, from external studies to continuing education. The Adlers had recently visited Japan, and Catherine was on top form because she'd been overwhelmed by the otherness of the whole experience. Her tutorials were always meticulously planned, clearly delivered, and full of local incident, as well as sound factual information. I too was overwhelmed and followed her to other classes in Tame. Fred was always in attendance as driver, general administrator, and interposer when he felt she had missed a point that he wished included. We continued our acquaintance from 1975 to 1980, when Catherine, who ran an annual summer school at Somerville College in Oxford, invited me to be a tutor and lecturer on the course. She proved to be the ideal course principal, encouraging tutors to stamp their own independent approach on their work, while operating closely together as a team, which always put the needs of our mature students first. It was both challenging and invigorating, as well as great fun to work with Catherine. I personally learned a good deal, and I have treasured memories of those weeks in July and August each year. Morning lectures and seminars were intensive. Afternoons were for relaxation, when we took small groups around Oxford, London, Stratford and the Cotswolds, and to our own homes. As well as evening meetings and general lectures, we ran films, poetry and music sessions, play reading, discussion groups and social get-togethers. Mature students whose first language was not English came to us from all over the world, wishing to update both their understanding of Britain and their fluency in speaking and writing the language, because they used it in their work. Catherine always aimed for a broad mix of nationalities at a time in the 70s when this was less common. I'd expected to meet students from Europe, but we also worked with visitors from Japan, South America, Iceland, Finland, even East Germany, all over the world. Remember that the Berlin Wall did not come down until 1989, and that Eastern Europe was firmly in the grip of communism during the 70s. It was very exciting for all of us, especially when Eastern Bloc students quietly requested copies of 1984, etc., under plain cover. They would read a forbidden book overnight and return it the next day. Fred was always there to chat on the lawn, to show students where to find shops, stamps or places they wished to visit. He ran special afternoon tours to the other Oxford, centring on Blackbird Leys and the Cowley Road. Every effort was made to show British life in all its infinite variety. He and Catherine were very keen that students went home considering us not only their tutors but their friends. It was the Adlers who invited me to consider teaching for the WEA, and I'm still doing it. After they retired, we visited them at their home in Headley Way, and later at the Albany on London Road in Headington. They were unfailingly welcoming, and Fred was adept at providing tea and cake. As time went on, Catherine became less mobile and more reliant than ever on Fred for shopping and everyday care. The last time we saw her, and while Fred was busy in the kitchen, she confided, "Fred is my angel," and he surely was. They made a perfect couple, two sharp minds with very similar interests, loving and giving towards each other, and determined quietly and positively to help others while fostering universal understanding, both through education and sheer fun. They had such vision, and they were so practical in bringing it to fruition. They certainly left their corner of the world a better place than they found it.